this is Connor from Seafoam Gaming here to give a retrospective over the game series that changed my life, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon. I'll be offering as much history as my friends and I have found, and will be giving my own personal experiences with each of the games in the series as much as I can. This episode, we'll be going over the beginnings of the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon series with Rescue Team. Let's go into the world of Pokemon! On September 16th, 2004, Pokemon Emerald released in Japan, marking the end of the third generation of the main series. A month later, at a Nintendo press conference, the fourth generation of the main series was confirmed to be in production for the then upcoming Nintendo DS, set to release in 2005. However, to ensure the games would become as good as they could get, Game Freak delayed the games until 2006 for Japan, which left 2005 to be an empty year for Pokemon fans. The first rumor of hope for excited Pokemon fans came from a late 2004 rumor where there was apparently a mystery dungeon game from Chunsoft in development for Nintendo's new handheld that would focus on Pokemon characters like Pikachu. In fact, the main tentative title, according to this rumor, was Mysterious Dungeon, Pokemon World, Pikachu's Great Adventure. Initial reactions to the rumor on the forums were rather mixed. The fact that there were no official screenshots, no logo, or any sort of confirmation led people to assume it was just one of those random new Pokemon game rumors meant to trick us all, and the wait for the next hit Pokemon games continued. On August 9th, 2005, 4 upcoming Pokemon titles were revealed for both the Nintendo DS and the Game Boy Advance. Pokemon Trollsay, Pokemon Ranger, and Pokemon Mysterious Dungeon Rescue Force were all revealed on the exact same day, to the Japanese. Slightly different than the initial rumors, however, Mysterious Dungeon was split into 2 versions. Red was a Game Boy Advance port, and Blue was a Nintendo DS upgraded version with little info at the time about what they were about in terms of story, except that one's on the Game Boy, one's on the DS. Despite the extensive research I've performed thanks to the help of the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon subreddit and my good friend BESPINBEN, I could only find so little about the actual development process of this game. It wasn't until late 2012 when, in an Iwata Asks interview, former Nintendo President Satoru Iwata talked with the CEO of the Pokemon Company, along with 2 employees from Spike Chunsoft, on what caused the crazy crossover to even exist in the first place. Check it out sometime, it's very interesting. I'm not gonna explain it since it'll take too long, but you should do it. It's fun. Shortly after the game had launched in Japan, people in the West were very worried about the possibilities of a localization. There were no plans for the game to come over to the West at the time of the Japanese release, and the track record the Mystery Dungeon series by itself didn't leave that much hope, with many prior installments being Japan exclusive. However, at E3 2006, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon was finally confirmed for North America as Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Red Rescue Team and Blue Rescue Team, set to launch on September 18th, 2006. The games launched on that date and were met with moderate reviews from critics and some good word of mouth thanks to fans on Cerebi forums and other websites at the time. Heck, according to some Cerebi members, it sold out in a lot of places shortly after the game got popular via word of mouth. Now, where was I during all this commotion, you may ask? And why do I feel I need to explain my history with the games? Why is this kid talking? I just want to learn about the games. What does he have to share that makes it so urgent that he wants to share his story and pass about the series? Well, you're gonna find out, whether you like it or not. Alternatively, you could choose to skip to this point in the video if you don't want to hear me ramble about my past. Though I recommend you listen at least once to know. To help you all understand how much this game meant to me back then, I'll let everybody know right now that my initial childhood was a wreck. The first few years of my life were decent at best, with me getting the good care and support I needed from my mother's side of the family, mostly thanks to my grandmother from that side. Of course, you may be asking, where was the dad in all this, and why not the mother? Without getting too personal because I don't want this to become a new Lifetime movie, my mother and father didn't get along too well, and my mother was actually quite emotionally unstable. Therefore, when I was living with that side of the family, my grandmother took the most care of me. But in 2004, she passed away, and it was up to my mother and her sister to take care of me. This did not go well because for the next 2 years, I lived in absolute uncertainty compared to other children. I didn't go to school that much, I stayed up throughout the night, and I played my Game Boy Advance in the middle of school when I was told to be doing activities by the teacher. I wasn't too social, and outside of a temporary friend I knew at one point for a short bit of time, I had no friends. My grandmother from my father's side of the family would take me over for the occasional visit every once in a while, and during those visits things were much better in terms of the living conditions. Unfortunately, my mother had custody of me, and because I was so young at the time, I never was aware of what I should do. I was only 6 years old after all. Things got worse as time went on, with the living conditions being more questionable, being unable to be taken to school by most of the time to the point that the dean of students had to go to my mother's apartment and actually convince her to take me to school because it was good for me, and numerous situations where I was exposed to content that a 6-year-old should never have to witness. I'll just not mention that yet. Actually, may never. Good idea. Eventually, the darkness of the situation took control of me, and despite video games being there to help me stay calm because of how fun they were, the fact that they would get pawned by my mother in a short amount of time led me to complete them as fast as I could. You could say I was a young version of the completionist, but not for the right reasons. While I'm not here to read a memoir or, again, being a Lifetime movie, I'm here to explain that this dark time in my life really hurt me. When other kids would go to the park with each other, I was stuck inside playing my Game Boy. When other kids would go to school, I was stuck inside my home because my mom was asleep. Sure, if you're a younger kid viewing this, you may be thinking, "Oh man, you got to miss school? Lucky!" But I actually did not like it too much. My temporary friend left, and I never saw him again, even to this day. Even 11 years after I saw him, I haven't seen him since. And the living conditions led to me going so unstable, because of lack of sleep, I'd attack the other classmates and start swearing and punching and kicking, for no reason, so I got sent to special ed. The occasional visit with my father's side would help me a little, but even then the prolonged stay in those poor conditions led to me just not knowing basic things other kids did. If you're wondering why my voice is all kind of odd, I can't seem to pronounce correctly some things and I sound a bit behind, because some people do tell me I sound like I'm not as old as I look, that's pretty much because of my past. I kind of delayed my learning. I didn't learn much stuff until I was 8, but I still persevered, and eventually throughout the next year in 2006, terrifying things started to happen under my mother's control, and some things were so bad that my mother or I could have easily died. It was at that point that my father's side tried to get even more to me, in order to get me out of my living conditions, to save me, and eventually, in March of 2006, I was relocated to my grandparents' home, ending my captivity. Now I'm not gonna go on and make it seem like I was scared to death of non-stop fear every minute of every day, and I was in poor conditions, and I was in third world country. No, I was 8 when I was rescued, and at the time I didn't know any better. Otherwise I would have called for help like any sane person would have done. I still had a GameCube and Game Boy Advance to play, and the memories of the games I was given during that hard time were actually quite good, despite all the hardships, because they were fun games. Most of them. Unfortunately, the time limit that was completely random caused my games to get pawned at complete random again. It didn't help me. Not at all, and I didn't even know when they would get pawned, and I didn't even know much about anything. I didn't even know how to use a computer besides going on nickjr.com. No game facts, no message boards, nothing. I did not know about any of that until much later on. Therefore, I knew nothing about game announcements unless I saw on TV, or if I walked into a store and saw a game. So it was pretty odd to be like a 90s kid in the sense that I went to every single game I played completely blind, but for the wrong reasons. Even shortly after my rescue, when I got to learn the internet for necessary school stuff, I wasn't sure what GameFAQs was, so whenever I got stuck in a game, I'd put it up for good. The summer of 2006 passed without much of a problem, and I got used to a better routine. I still had anger issues and problems talking to anyone in general. Even respectfully, I couldn't even talk to anyone respectfully. And of course, I had no clue what games were coming out either. Enter late August of 2005, when my grandmother and I went to a local GameStop and watched the monitor they had on display, which was covering the game titles they showed off at E3 earlier that May. One game caught my eye. It was just a super short clip of two Pokemon having a conversation with Zapdos. The idea of Pokemon talking for real intrigued me in a way, but I had no clue when the game would launch, and I didn't even know if I could even earn the game because I had to change my behavior, so I can't get games for bad behavior. So I moved on, and until the week of September 8th, 2006. Early in the week, I watched Cartoon Network for long periods of time after coming home from school, and while watching it one evening, it was promoting a special episode for Pokemon Mystery Dungeon. As soon as I got home on the 8th of September, I asked my grandmother to record the special episode using a VHS tape. Unfortunately, she forgot to tape the first airing. Luckily for me, right before Pokemon Battle Frontier debuted, they had another airing. Right before I went to bed, I rushed down to the basement, scrambling to find a blank VHS tape that wasn't Grandma's precious videos, and popping into the VHS player to immediately hit the record button. And right as it was about to play for the second time that night, I saw it. Just a glimpse of it. I knew I got it recorded. The next morning, I ran downstairs, rewinded the tape, and watched from the very beginning. Immediately, my 8-year-old self was hooked on the episode, interested in watching it up right until the very end. I still remember at the time being excited what Squirtle's adventures had to offer, until it ended on a cliffhanger. Yes, a cliffhanger. I was a bit upset, but the special episode made me want to play the game for myself, so it kind of worked in terms of advertising and business. I don't know. Actually, I still have the VHS tape to this very day, right here. Of course, it's not a specially marked Pokemon Mystery Dungeon box, but this is the same box, same tape. I have it. I actually kind of want to save it on something, but I don't know how. Even with my capture device, it won't let me. But the point is, I have the piece of Pokemon Mystery Dungeon history, and it'll be mine for as long as I can keep it. So, I might as well explain more about the special episode for those unaware. I can't show any of it due to copyright, so sorry about that. But I can summarize it and the history it has. Before I even knew about it, Pokemon USA had plans to get rid of the 4Kids voice actor cast and replace them with new voice actors. This decision caused quite a bit of controversy back in the day. So what does this have to do with the Mystery Dungeon special? Well, like the Mastermind of Mirage Pokemon, it was commissioned by Pokemon USA to help promote the game in the West, and aired on the same night as the premiere of Battle Frontier, as I said before, where the new voice actors for the Advanced Generation characters were now set in stone. In other words, the PMD special only existed for the sake of marketing. Nowadays, anyone can agree that the English version and even the Japanese version is incredibly cheesy. There's no wonder why it never finished that cliffhanger. It was a horribly made special, bad voice acting, weird pacing, and it just was made for marketing. Even though the Rescuer's Guide actually says in the back of the book that you can find more info on the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon TV show. Which means they probably had plans, they clearly had plans to make it a special TV show. Not an episode, it was gonna continue. So good riddance. It doesn't have the worst voice actors of the anime specials in general though, but we'll get to that another time, trust me. Now back to the history on the video game. I only knew from looking at the Pokemon official website that the games would not be out until September 18th, and my only handheld at the time was my old Game Boy Advance, so I was stuck with Red, and I had to convince my aunt to buy me Red version as a good behavior reward, because I got a good score on that week's spelling test at school. So on Wednesday, September 20th, 2006, I came home with Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Red Rescue Team, the Rescuer's Guide, and a poster, which I all have today, as hard as it is to see. And therefore, the life-changing journey begins. And when I first booted up the game on that glorious Game Boy Advance health and warning safety screen, I saw the title screen intro, which blew my mind back then due to its amazing music. I played every main series Pokemon game before then, excluding Crystal version, and while Gold and Silver in particular had some amazing songs, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon blew me away from the very beginning. I could tell it was going to be an epic adventure. But my biggest question was, who am I going to choose? Who am I going to choose? Am I going to be a Mudkip, a Squirtle? Am I going to be a Charmander? Am I going to be Pikachu? Who am I going to be? Can I be an Articuno? Can I be this or that? Can I be... Anyways, my biggest question was, well, the questionnaire, because my biggest question wouldn't be answered until I found the Sun questionnaire I had to answer, asking me about personal what would you do situations that I had no clue what to solve. Some of them I could easily answer, while others made me think really hard, or I just gave random answers because I didn't recognize any of the words. I, of course, don't remember exactly what questions I was given, considering how I don't think anyone does unless they written them down. I was assigned a Mudkip, which according to guides nowadays is the calm behavior for male-gendered players. Looking at the questions that gave calm points, I can sorta guess which ones I have picked at the time due to my shy behavior, so it was pretty much a given that a Mudkip would have likely been my main character no matter what questions were thrown at me. Wasn't entirely lonely since I had my grandparents, so I couldn't have been a Cubone, so I guess I was destined to be a Mudkip, whether I liked him or not. He's cool. Coming to the partner screen, I was relieved to find out I could choose my partner, so I picked Chikorita. One main reason being that she was in the anime special, and I liked her in there, and therefore I thought she was the correct option, because I thought, oh, you gotta be the same characters from the TV show, otherwise you are not playing the game right. Once my choices were picked, the game began. With an ominous intro, the game starts. My character was a former human that just randomly became a Mudkip out of nowhere? Interesting, I thought back then. Naming myself Connor! In all caps, the adventure began with tiny words. Getting the hang of the gameplay, my younger self was immediately hooked on the simple yet fun gameplay mechanics. It was not like the main series in that you could mash the A button once you know what you're doing. You had to strategically plan, move around, and basically use linked moves to your advantage later on in the game. Clearing tiny words, which was easy, I felt like the game was going to be a fun experience, just like Super Mario World, Mario Party Advance, and many other games I've played before it. Progressing through the game, I was more and more hooked on the gameplay, and I loved the idea of collecting new Pokemon via recruitment for the rescue team, from the Magnemite to many other Pokemon I have on my rescue team to this day. It basically encouraged me to keep playing, and it started off with basic events like Save Metapod. After doing that mission and defeating Team Meanies, the antagonists of this game, you arrive at Mount Thunder. You must climb the mountain to defeat Zapdos. And then the team finds out they must go to the Great Canyon to find Xatu, an incredibly wise Pokemon who knows all and may be the key to helping the player find out why he even turned into a Pokemon. The epic music and the triumphant feel of finality that this dungeon had during my very first playthrough really struck with me, and it made me wonder if I was getting to the end of the game so early on. Eventually, you arrive at the Hill of the Ancients. Xatu explains to both you and the partner that the world's in serious danger in an ominous threat of sorts. Gengar, the leader of Team Meanies, overhears this conversation, and before this point in the story, they didn't do much besides the bad guy stuff that is pretty much everywhere. They pretty much just steal the mailbox letters and bully the team. Not really bad. It was at that moment where the biggest twist I had ever seen in a video game had happened. The team returns to Pokemon Square to learn that Gengar had convinced the townsfolk that you were the evil human from the Legend of Ninetales, and that as long as you were alive, the natural disasters would keep occurring. This shock twist surprised the heck out of me during that first playthrough. The town I had trusted and gotten adjusted to, gain friend areas, gain items, and learning how to link moves when the shop finally opened, I was having to leave it and escape and I had no idea if I even made a mistake. Like, was there an alternate ending? Could I not get caught? No, even Team ACT, Alakazam, Charizard, and Tyranitar, which the game showed as the strongest Pokemon team in the entire town, they turned against my team at that point. The horrified feeling my younger self had was unlike anything I had ever felt before. Forget Final Fantasy VI, forget any RPG with a generic cliché twist. This really surprised me, because Gengar just went from being a complete goofball to an evil manipulator. And seeing that Caterpie and the other few who believed in my team stick around and believe in my team as they escaped, it resonated with me. The pulling from the town in secret before they could come after you under the advice of Team ACT made me feel bad inside. It kind of reminded me of my out-of-control behavior due to my poor living conditions back in the day. Was I perhaps like that in real life? Was I really close to a real-life fugitive? And that was when a melody started to play. A sad melody filled with sorrow that made me cry right then and there. And you all probably cried when you first heard this song when playing the game. Seeing my team escape through the harsh conditions for what seemed like days in their world, all because of something that they may or may not have even been responsible for, really struck with me. It kind of reminded me a bit of my own past due to the sense of uncertainty I had, not being sure if I could be in one spot for so long, or if I was just kicked out of the house and forced to walk out in the middle of the night for a few hours. I was scared back then, and the scared feeling my character had was similar to me. Dubbed one away by fellow fans of the game, the real emotions would not stop. You eventually reach Lapras Cave, the first dungeon of a gauntlet section where you must go through multiple dungeons in a row without the ability to return to town, and you must buy all the items from the in-dungeon Kecleon shops. Just don't steal, otherwise he'll kill you. You must also use the Kangaskhan statues to withdraw items from storage to use. I remember the first time I played these games that this section was just completely difficult compared to the previous dungeons. They were kind of easy, you could restock items, prepare yourself, and then all of a sudden you are in the gauntlet and you can't escape. But when you get used to it, it's not too bad. You eventually reach Mount Blaze. You see, Zapdos was a warm-up for this part of the game, cause Mount Blaze is a huge pain to go through. The enemies in the dungeon themselves aren't that bad, and they weren't that bad for me back then, but then you fight Moltres. Depending on the team, he can be a real pain or an easy boss. For me, it was somewhere in the middle. My Mudkip knew good water moves at the time, and my Chikorita was of course weak to fire. And in Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, when either one of you gets defeated in the main story, you both lose. I still remember almost defeating Moltres, only to lose due to my partner getting hit with his powerful attacks. You lose a lot of the items when you get knocked out for good, and since I had no way of calling for a rescue back then, it was the first of many struggles that come with that game. By the time I had defeated Moltres and made it to the Frosty Grotto, I had no Reviver Seeds left, only a few minor items I could care less about. Putting them into my storage and taking out a few of the leftover essentials, and keeping track of my PowerPoint usage, I entered Frosty Grotto, to what might be the hardest dungeon in the main story for me and many other people. Wanna know why? This is why. Articuno, the end dungeon boss, is an exercise in frustration unless you have a team with both a pure fire and pure water type on it. I was a Mudkip, which was a pure water type, so again, I was good. But my partner was not, because she was a grass type. And she certainly wouldn't change anytime soon. Here are some problems that Articuno gives to many players of the game, including my younger self. 1. She can use Powder Snow, which hits everybody on the entire field, so if you have a grass type, or a type that's weak to ice, you'll be destroyed. She can use Ice Beam on one member, which is another powerful ice attack that can again destroy a member. And third, she can use Powder Snow. It's the biggest threat, and if you don't have a good link move combination or enough Reviver Seeds or stat boosting items that'll help you, you will be stuck for a while. And I was actually stuck for quite a while at this point. I spent the next 2 weeks just trying to beat the stupid fat bird, and I kept losing because of my partner's weakness to ice. Eventually, after a while of trying, I finally defeated Articuno, which gave me immense satisfaction. I don't even remember exactly how I finally won because it's been so long, but I do know for sure that whatever gave me luck somehow just paid off. But before we talk about the final dungeon, I must address a recurring theme you will no doubt see on anything related to Pokemon anywhere I'm at. My obsession with Articuno. You see, I wasn't obsessed with Articuno back then to the point I wanted every merchandise that legendary I could find. She did have a special place in my heart at the time. Back in the early 2000s when I was living with my mother's family, the whole family enjoyed the Pokemon second movie, the movie 2000. I also remember my other grandmother being fascinated by Articuno due to how pretty she was and how she was a major character in the movie. We both liked her, and for the next few years to come, she was my grandmother's favorite Pokemon. So when she passed away before the dark times of my life began, I was honestly thinking of Articuno whenever I thought of my grandmother from that side of the family. To this very day, even after my rescue, and even moving on, and even with a better family, my other grandmother was still with me in spirit, and I honestly believe my so-called obsession with Articuno mainly came about because she liked Articuno, and we had a good reason. It was our bonding tool. I can't necessarily say that the particular battle against Articuno in the game gave me any memories of my grandma, because back then I was still recovering from the rescue and I didn't really pay attention to any of that depressing stuff because I was still confused on what was going on. Still, considering how that battle was so frustrating, it's probably for the better that back then I remembered Articuno for being a pain instead of someone I knew. So we finally get to Mount Freeze, the final dungeon in the Gauntlet. For the final dungeon, it's actually quite easy, both back then when I was playing, and to this day when I was playing it again for this review. Just be sure Absol's on the team and use your moves carefully and you should make it to Ninetales in no time. After going through the main dungeon, you arrive at what seems to be a boss room, and then you and your partner will confront Team ACT, who seems to have the intention to destroy you once and for all. But before the fierce battle can actually begin, Ninetales makes it just in time to reveal to everyone that the player is not the cursed human. She also reveals that Team ACT needs to go after Groudon because he's the cause of some of the disasters, and therefore the player is allowed to return home. Safe and sound, their names cleared, and with Gengar discredited, the Fugitive Saga ends. To be honest, after the Fugitive arc, the game kind of goes back to normal in terms of the intensity of the plot. You start off by helping Wynaut and Wobbuffet, two Pokemon who ask you and your partner to go help stop a group of Mankey in the nearby Upworld Forest. A rather simple mission, but the reward for doing so is getting a cool rescue team renovation that turns the base into a new one that depends on which starter you chose. Not too long afterwards, the team begins to hear rumors of the legendary Team ACT getting defeated at the hands of Groudon, as a new team is sent to stop the terrifying beast. When that secondary team gets defeated as well, it's up to you and your partner to venture deep into the Magma Cavern for the final battle against Groudon. When playing this area for the first time, it really felt obvious yet again. This was far from the end, and the boring music selection to the dungeon was just... it basically made it anticlimactic. And just like that, after defeating Groudon in a very easy boss battle, he's not the cause of the disasters, but instead it's actually a meteor that's heading right towards the planet, and the only way Quasar, Guardian in Disguise, can destroy it once and for all and save the world. Now I began to sense that the game was at its end. The finality was real, as the story began to take a darker turn. The Fugitive arc was sad, but also gave some insights on the endgame, and this was what that arc was predicting. Instead of feeling sad or nervous about it, I felt quite confident, thanks to the experience I had gained from defeating so many difficult Pokemon during that time. Along with anything from jobs I had completed at that point, the music changed to a theme of desperation, and now fans have dubbed it World Calamity, which is by far my most favorite song in the entire game, hands down. It's a sense of dread, a sense of desperation, and honestly, no close to the end theme has given me this much excitement, and it's been that way for ages until just recently when I played Golden Sun and beat the Venus Lighthouse. The final journey had begun, and the next few days at school basically consisted of me getting super excited to return home and complete the story. I wanted to know what the ending was. Eventually, I learned that Gardevoir summoned my character to the Pokemon world in an effort to save it, erasing the memories of the human form to clean both the heart and the mind so that the character would be able to go save the world, and that this was the final journey. Together, I went to the Hill of the Ancients with my partner as we used the Teleport Gem, created by Xatu, Alakazam, and a mysterious ghost type, and we all traveled to the Sky Tower, the final dungeon in the game. This was it, the final journey. I had enough time before bed during that one night in early October, after spending a few weeks earlier on the rest of the story. For the very first time, I felt as if I was the actual character in the video game, due to the excellent presentation and character development, giving me an attachment to the whole cast of characters. Sure, you would see some people maybe name themselves in other RPGs, and I did that too. In the main games I named myself Kana, but overall it just felt like I was playing someone else. This time, I felt like myself. This was it. If I finally complete this game, I can move on to another game and forget about all about in the coming months. That's what I thought at the time, but I never knew how the story would end. After 30 floors of difficult enemies, I arrived on top of the Sky Tower, where Rayquaza laid in wait. It was at that moment where I witnessed the true terror that was the meteor. As the team will try to convince Rayquaza that the world's in danger and he must destroy the meteor, it's coming ever so closer to the planet. And since Rayquaza refuses to believe the team, you must engage in a final battle for the fate of the world to snap him out of his behavior and get him to destroy that meteor. Epic music that hasn't played anywhere else in the game before this moment will begin to play, and the ultimate battle begins! Generally, Rayquaza was only moderately challenging for me. For a final boss, it wasn't that big of a deal. He has some pretty powerful moves, but since you can get Reviver Seeds and other things before you enter the tower, you should be fine if you don't get killed by a monster house, making this a much easier battle than the one with Articuno since earlier you didn't have the ability to restock. Despite the difficulty of the overall fight, I honestly didn't remember having much trouble with it back then, even in terms of my younger self being worse at everything. Out of a few initial mistakes I had, it only took a short amount of time to get back to the top of the tower, and eventually I defeated Rayquaza. And I still remember my first reaction, which was that of relief. The battle was over, everything would return to normal, and Rayquaza destroyed the meteor. But I was in for a big shock by Pokemon standards, and in terms of people who are my age, 8 years old, any game in general. Rayquaza warns you and your partner that the meteor is so close to the tower that it can basically destroy both you and your partner if it was destroyed right now. Still, despite shocking me as the player, my character and the partner agreed, as the meteor was destroyed just in time, ending the natural disasters and saving the world. But before a happy ending could start, things seemed rather strange. After the destruction of the meteor, it began to show my Mudkip character, in the middle of this strange, dark and desolate dimension with great fog and no one else in sight. The ominous music began to play, and I felt a sense of dread, kinda similar to that I felt during my captivity. I tried to deny at first, the fact that they would no way ever allow death in a Pokemon game. No way, they couldn't do that, that's just not right. But then the evidence just piled up, and I was horrified. Until an unlikely hero came to save the day, making up for the horrible actions he had done early in the story. Gengar appears from nowhere and literally took my player somewhere. I was completely confused. Why was he dragging my player through this weird abyss of nothing? And after this entire time of hating him due to the depressing fugitive arc, along with what he did in Ninetales, he saves my character's life? I was in disbelief, and it made me feel connected to him in a way, which was something I never really felt at that point, the feeling of forgiveness. With the world back to normal as the natural disasters are concluded, I saw that both me and my partner had awakened on top of the Hill of the Ancients. The world was saved, the mystery was solved, the game was over, and I was about to quit for the night. Thinking it was just gonna be save and quit, you can replay the final dungeon, and that's it. Gardevoir just appeared out of nowhere, and then mentioned it was finally the time. The time for me to say goodbye to my partner and the rest of the Pokemon world. While everyone else in the game was celebrating, my character began to glow in a strange yellow light in a moment I wasn't sure would actually happen. It was hinted at a few points in the story, but I didn't believe it. I just thought it was, oh, it's gonna be like another form of maybe telling you to load the save file from before the Sky Tower. No, it was actually a cutscene, a very important cutscene. Not having any knowledge of what the ending would be, again, due to my lack of GameFAQs access, I was utterly shocked, more so than the fugitive arc, more so than the death scene, and more so during any point in the entire game. Such sad music began to play, and my character knew it was time to say goodbye. Everybody looked at him shocked, completely surprised my character had to leave. They all started to cry, even those you think wouldn't cry, like Tyranitar and Charizard. The one that was hurting most of all was the partner. I could see in the dialogue, I could see it in the text, how upset she was, along with everybody else. I too began to cry when I realized the whole idea of the ending. I cried often back then when I was hurt or injured, even if it was a minor bump. But this was the first time in ages I cried as much as I ever did before. Probably since my grandmother died. Letting out tears of sorrow for the partner and characters that my own had to leave in order to return to the human world. I was just completely surprised. The past few weeks I felt as if the NPCs were my only friends in the world. And as odd as this sounds, to leave them in the game, well, in-game, my character in the game left them. To have the character leave them in the game made me realize I just was kind of lonely in the real world. Overall, the ending, just from the shock of it, made me learn so many things from the real world. It made me learn so many things from the adventure I went on, through the story, through reading the emotional text, through loving every moment of the story and the gameplay. It made me learn kindness, courtesy, and growing a close bond with the friends, no matter how dear they may be. And the credits rolled. More sad music played. My character began to feel sad, just like my real-life self, and it was just over like that. I was too caught up in sadness at the thought of losing a fictional friend. Even though it was fictional, I didn't pay much attention to the credits. The credits theme just made me more upset, and after crying my eyes out for a few minutes, fateful words appeared on screen. Words that would lead to a new beginning for both my character and my real-life self. My character made a decision to refuse to return to the human world and stay with the partner, who was at that point completely depressed over the departure of my character. While my tears were still going, I felt a sense of joy when I saw my mudkip return to the front of the team base. Seeing the eyes of both best friends meet once again, I saw the words "end" on my screen. It made me think about what just happened. I finally saved the game, and quit for the night, and just thought about what happened in the world of Pokemon. Just this fictional world, a world that was lighthearted in other games, was somehow one that reminded me of my dark times, and kind of taught me some values I really wouldn't have known until later on if my current therapy sessions continued. It just made me realize that the final showdown felt like it was the end of everything, and it really was when I saw my character leave. The emotional drain actually was quite strong, to the point that after the ending was finished and after I saved and was in bed, I felt like something within me was released. A dark sort of behavior aspect of myself was completely gone. It felt like it was being drained out of me. It was the inability to treat others correctly. The whole time when I was getting used to school, I just was unable to really talk to anyone without getting incredibly rude or selfish. And I never really knew how to feel sympathy for my classmates, but the ending changed that. I felt that one day I'll meet a real-life version of that partner in the game, someone I will be friends with forever. And of course many other friends I have to meet in the future. As long as I remember to behave courteous and correctly, as long as I remember to behave nicely and courteous, I'll be fine, I thought. I can even still remember a dream I had later on in the week. It was a random dream, sure, but this dream kinda stuck with me because of the just perfect timing of it. It showed the ending scene to me again, but in a first person's perspective. But this time, The ending was playing in a first-person perspective, and my partner was named Lillian. I've never heard that name before that moment, and I never even named my partner Amy, so I just gave it a default name. So when I checked with my family, none of us knew Lillian of any kind. But I firmly believe, as absurd as this may sound, that my dream was a prophecy of sorts, and I feel like that my real-life partner is someone named Lillian, who's just out there in the world, waiting for someone to just become friends with. Ever since then, after spending a few extra years thinking about it, I usually have a habit of naming the partner in every RPG game I played Lillian, as a good luck charm of sorts. Well, it's realistically a random dream. The fact that it just happened, well, at the perfect time after completing this game, made me feel as if it had a little bit of meaning to it, even if I wasn't sure about what the meaning was. I didn't realize it, but the ending of Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Red Rescue Team would change my life forever. Weeks went by, and then months went by. I had stopped playing the game due to a lack of any interest in the post-story, mainly due to its difficulty and randomness. Weeks went by, and then months. I had stopped playing the game because of a lack of any interest in the post-story, mostly due to its difficulty. So I focused on other things, such as learning how to interact with my fellow classmates, which you can kind of thank Mystery Dungeon for, because before then, it was actually kind of predicted by my grandparents that it would take much longer for me to get used to talking with others. And since my behavior kind of changed over time, I basically went from becoming known as being a berserk kid over the lip, and as my behavior changed over time, I was no longer known for being And as my behavior changed over time, I was no longer known as going berserk over the littlest thing due to the trauma I had faced before then. I eventually got over that, for the most part, and I had new friends that helped me and my grandparents. I behaved like a third grader afterward. I still pretty much behaved like a normal third grader afterwards, and the fact I made such a change to adapt to a better lifestyle so quickly really surprised a lot of people. Now, some may figure it would take a long time, and it definitely wasn't a magical overnight solution by now. It actually did help me in the long run, so I do give credit to Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Red Rescue Team for changing my life, thanks to the wonderful story and the character development. Even to this day, I'm a huge fan of the series, and I feel that if I had never made a fateful decision to play through the end of the main story, my life would be completely different. I'd probably be a social outcast that wouldn't do much at all, and I wouldn't even be, willing to make friends. Others claim that the main series helped to make friends due to the link cable and the craze back in the day, but I believe Pokemon Mystery Dungeon helped me make friends due to the friends in the game. So that, my friends, wraps up my experience with Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Red Rescue Team. To this day, I still have my original cartridge and the original Game Boy Advance, though it barely works. But I do have the original save file, so maybe one day I'll complete the post-ending and end Kip Team's legacy once and for all. But for now, I'll leave it the rest. If Nintendo ever re-releases the game on the Virtual Console for Wii U, I would not hesitate to pick it up and play through it again, and I recommend that you all do the exact same if it comes out on the Virtual Console, or if it's already out by the time you watch this. So I suppose I'll see you all with part 2 of my Pokemon Mystery Dungeon retrospective, where I'll cover my experience with the...
Hey Kenneth, you forgot an important piece of Pokemon Mystery Dungeon history. Remember the book you spent so long trying to get? I'm BESPINBEN. I'm the spirit inside the plush toy.
You mean Ginji's Rescue Team? That book I spent so much time trying to get, only for it to be for nothing, essentially? Do I need to share that story? Besides, you're not BESPINBEN, so don't make my video a talking plush toy episode. Neon Wax and Blade and Darkness the Cursed already do that stuff.
Well, regardless of if it's dramatic or not, you need to share it. That manga's so awesome. So do it now. Please, it won't be that long. Besides, I have work to do for the next episode.
Well, I didn't want to share this story just yet, but due to advice from my good friend BESPINBEN, I decided to finish this part off with a piece of Pokemon Mystery Dungeon merchandise. Ginji's Rescue Team, the official manga for the games. I apologize if this video is getting rather long, but I feel that it's important to mention the trouble I had to go through to get this stupid book. So about a year after I had completed Rescue Team, I was in the 4th grade, learning how to use the internet safely, learning where to get game magazines, and among other things. So I hadn't quite learned how to search through other websites like GameFAQs due to my school's filter. I did see a rather interesting find one afternoon looking up books for the school classroom under the recommendation of my teacher, and there it was. An official manga adaptation of Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Rescue Team. I was completely in awe as I felt the urge to get my hands on the copy no matter what. The game that helped me become who I was had a book, I must read it. So I begged my 4th grade teacher to order the manga for the classroom, only to get declined because she didn't find any sort of educational value, which seems rather typical of a teacher and is kind of understandable. So during my 4th grade year, I was still in special ed to help me adapt to anything I missed during my years with my mother's side of the family, so that I wouldn't be too behind compared to the other students, because even though I did improve, I was far from perfect. My special ed teacher for both 4th and 5th grade, however, was kind of a nightmare, let me tell you. Why? Because this book drove her crazy! You see, after being declined by both my library and my teacher to order the book, I went to my special ed teacher and pestered her non-stop for how do I get this book, wondering where do I get, what's the best price, how can I bring it to the school book club, and stuff like that. So after months of non-stop immature 4th grade begging, she gave in and told me a place where I could get the book, which was a Borders bookstore not too far from my school. Unfortunately, due to my constant pestering for multiple weeks at a time, it led to my special ed teacher referring to me as the Pokemon kid for the rest of elementary school. And since I was in that age group where Pokemon is now considered to be too kiddie for people my age, it's of course complete nonsense to the group of passionate Pokemon fans, but regardless, that same weekend, I was told where I could get my copy, so I went over the Borders, looked in the manga aisle, and there it was, my copy of Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Ginji's Rescue Team. So I spent the whole time that one night reading it all at home, eager to see if it would be as epic as the games themselves. So is it just as good? Well, less than no. It kind of was only $8. That's kind of... it's the same price as a Super Nintendo game. You spend that same amount of money to get Chrono Trigger on the Wii, so it has to be good, right? Honestly, when reading this book back in the day, everything felt rather strange to me. It has some lovely artwork, don't get me wrong, but the story's rather bizarre, even by Mystery Dungeon standards. Most of the characters from the games return, but this manga stars a human named Ginji, who you actually see in human form in the beginning of the manga. It's rather interesting to see the author make his own interpretation of the plot, so I wonder how the other characters... Oh. Look at that! Out of all the characters on this page, why is Ode Kuno giving me an evil look? Did the author feel the need to make it like the ultimate source of all evil because of the difficulty in the games? Whatever the case, the main story begins with Ginji rushing home in a hurry to get his birthday present, and he looks all over the home only to collapse when his mother returns. I'm actually quite surprised that she did not call the police or call for help because of the fact that her son collapsed on the floor. I sure would be as a parent. Ginji gets so knocked out that he somehow teleports to the Pokemon world right in the middle of an earthquake, rescuing a small Mudkip. Ginji realizes that he's now transformed into a Torchic and goes completely insane, thinking it's a bad dream and doing whatever he can to escape from it. After snapping out of it for the first time, he goes to Mudkip's training ground, which just so happens to be an area with a bunch of toys that Mudkip only uses to train because he's rather sensitive in general, but has a dream to get stronger to join a rescue team and help other Pokemon. Ginji wanders off on his own in hopes of searching for any other humans to find out how to return to normal, even mentioning the police at one point. So going through the dungeon, they discover Caterpie, who's lost and terrified, but they have to fight off a group of Sunkern and all the adults in order to save him. Caterpie is saved, and Mudkip gets confidence that prompts him to ask Ginji to form a rescue team with him. Ginji declines and wanders off, which ends chapter 1. Chapter 2 begins with Ginji back in school, ready for the school physicals. Nervous about his height, he goes to get measured only to find that he's a tall chick still, which makes him completely embarrassed in front of his entire class due to his size. Ginji begins to panic only to wake up in Mudkip's home, which causes Mudkip to ask what happened. Ginji explains his dream, and Mudkip offers advice. So he accepts the advice only to be told by Mudkip that he should evolve into a Blaziken to become 6 feet tall, which makes Ginji hit him on the head for his stupidity. Ginji goes back to searching for an answer to becoming human, and Mudkip follows suit, tripping and somehow turning into Sonic the Hedgehog as he spin dashes right into Ginji, giving him a rescue team badge as they collided. Ginji declines yet again as Mudkip explains how Zatu may be able to tell Ginji the answers he needs. So Ginji finally joins Mudkip in search of Zatu. Along the way they meet Gengar, who looks rather goofy compared to his in-game appearance, and Metacham and Ekans are nowhere to be found. Asking for assistance to go to Zatu to retrieve a lost item, Ginji and Mudkip agree to escort him through Mount Thunder, while Zapdos is guarding the way. Despite the overwhelming power of the legendary Pokemon, the two Pokemon easily defeat Zapdos with a bit of teamwork. The trio arrive at the Hill of the Ancients, where they meet Zatu. Ginji immediately fires a flamethrower at him due to his incredible impatience, and he ends up being amazed on how it did nothing to him at all. Of course, when he stops focusing, he feels a tremendous pain causing a little bit of funny humor, while Zatu's completely scorched. Zatu confirms to Ginji that he is a human transformed into a Pokemon, not making much sense to Ginji or the reader. He heads towards a nearby town, and then Gengar turns his back on the two and accuses Ginji of being the cursed human from the Ninetales legend, bringing up that story out of complete nowhere, which the few Pokemon in the town somehow believe. This is how Chapter 2 ends. You can pretty much tell that majority of the game was skipped, with Pokemon Square being non-existent and Mount Thunder just being thrown in the middle of nowhere for no reason. I'll get into the problems this causes later on in the book, so hold tight as we move on to Chapter 3. Angered by the accusation, Ginji leaves town to go find Ninetales, while Mudkip follows from behind. They continue their journey, before running into Moltres, who appears out of nowhere! That's a common theme in this book, by the way. Gengar tricked Moltres into attacking Ginji, claiming he'd destroy the world if he wasn't defeated, so the two begin a very difficult battle, the legendary, and Moltres seems to overwhelm them at first with powerful fire attacks, taunting Ginji with the thought of abandoning Mudkip the same way as he supposedly abandoned Gardevoir. Moltres continues his onslaught, as Ginji thinks up a plan to strike back. Using a clever combination of Sand Attack and Smokescreen, the two combine their powers to create a rock slide that pretty much kills Moltres. With Moltres destroyed at this point and nowhere to be seen for the rest of the book, the two head into Frosty Forest, ending Chapter 3. Chapter 4 is kind of like the games at this point. It starts off with Ginji dreaming about a nice vacation on the beach in the human world, before being jolted awake by Mudkip, who explains that he can't fall asleep in the snow for obvious reasons. So they now must head through the Frosty Forest. As they journey through the snow, Mudkip warns of a terrifying Absol who may be out to eat them. Not too scared, Ginji continues on before the two encounters a said Absol, who tries his absolute hardest to do a scary face. Upon realizing that the whole trick is Ginji, which Gengar explained to Absol earlier that he was the cause of the disasters, same way as he did the Moltres, Absol becomes terrified and now believes that Ginji will eat him for some reason. A tall chick eating an Absol that's much bigger than him? Well, it wouldn't be the weirdest thing that would happen, at least. Explaining to the disaster Pokemon that it's not true, Mudkip reasons with Absol, prompting him to explain that he understands what it feels like to be falsely accused of disasters, since Absol is the disaster Pokemon. Wishing them luck, he heads off into the distance as the two continue their journey to meet Ninetales. As Mudkip climbs an icy mountain, Articuno appears out of nowhere to give them an intimidating look. Confronting the two about the disasters, the two begin a fight before Absol rushes in to stop them, causing Articuno to stop the fighting once and for all. However, Gengar gets mad, finds out Articuno does not want to believe Gengar, and therefore he tries to kill all four of them with an avalanche. Using her ultimate move, Articuno performs a sheer cold, which stops the avalanche, and Mudkip and Torchic are allowed to pass into Magma Cavern, where Ninetales is waiting for them. Absol makes a leave, and Articuno leaves as well, which ends chapter 4. That's right, we are already at the second to last chapter and barely anything has happened. But it gets much worse from here. Chapter 5 begins with our two heroes entering Magma Cavern as they can tell that they are closer than ever to seeing Ninetales and clearing Ginji's name once and for all. As they get closer to Ninetales' domain, Mudkip spots the legendary Team ACT, who again appears out of nowhere to rescue Mudkip from Ginji. As they try and take Mudkip away from Ginji, Mudkip fights back, as he sides with Ginji against the powerful Gold Rank team, before engaging in battle. That's right folks, in this manga they actually fight Team ACT, which is by far the best part of the entire manga. Despite their best efforts, neither side will budge, with both sides being equally powerful in strength. They continue to fight until Ninetales appears and makes them stop the fighting. Ginji asks if he's really the cursed human from the legend, only for Ninetales to confirm that he definitely is not, which clears his name once and for all. However, he immediately warns the 5 members that Groudon's about to awaken, and Gengar has plans to destroy the world with the monster. With the true antagonist revealed, the two teams set aside their differences and team up for the final battle against Groudon, ending Chapter 5. Chapter 6 begins in Magma Cavern, where Gengar is frustrated that Ginji has cleared his name and basically revealed that Gengar is the human from the legend. About to awaken Groudon to destroy the Earth, Gengar begins to awaken the legendary beast, as Ginji and Mudkip rush to stop him. However, Groudon's incredibly powerful, making it much more difficult than all the previous fights. With all efforts at reasoning with Groudon completely failing, Mudkip tries his best to convince Gengar that this is not the right thing to do. Continuing to reason with Gengar, Mudkip's emotions come off to Gengar as being similar to that of Gardevoir's, the one he betrayed so many centuries ago. Realizing his mistake, he protects Mudkip from Groudon's wrath just in time, as the rest of their Pokemon friends arrive to assist. Proving to Ninetales that he can be a good Pokemon after all, Gengar redeems himself as they all unleash one final attack on Groudon, destroying him and stopping the disasters once and for all. Everybody cheers, Mudkip is happy that the world is safe, and Ginji wakes up. The entire thing was a dream. He looks under his bed, discovering that his rescue badge is real, meaning it must have not been a dream. So imagining that Mudkip is happy as a rescue in the Pokemon world, Ginji goes to another day of school, ending the story. Ginji's rescue team is just a big mess. It tries to adapt the story of Pokemon Mystery Dungeon to manga format, but it feels so rushed that most things don't make any sense. Characters appear out of nowhere, the ending's super upsetting, and the name of the final chapter is Tears and Emotions, which probably implied that maybe it would be like the games in terms of the ending. But no, it was just a dream. Overall, it felt more like a parody of the games instead of a real adaptation, which made my 9-year-old self rather disappointed. But there were good moments. The art was cute and the battle with Team ACT was very epic. But besides that, Ginji's rescue team is not that interesting. It felt very rushed, it didn't last that long, and it really didn't have any of the emotions that the games had. Besides, think about it for a moment. Ginji's mom was gonna give him a present the next day. Ginji passed out until next day. He woke up the next day and found a badge under his pillow. So what would that imply? That the badge was the birthday present the entire time, which meant that theoretically he asked for a badge like that before he was sent to the Pokemon world, which means the entire adventure was pointless. And even though there were two instances of dreams within a dream, it just pretty much just felt bad overall. Still, that pretty much wraps up my eternal memories of Rescue Team. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you'd like, please leave feedback in the comments below, and like and subscribe if you want to see the next parts of my retrospective. Goodbye, and I'll see you soon with my history of Explorers of Time and Darkness, the second games in the series. Thank you all so much for watching my video. Sorry if it sounded like I was kind of, well, out of it when I was talking in this video. I'm actually not that confident in my own voice, and as I explained in the video, my past and the events that happened in it kind of delayed my learning skills. So even though I'm now caught up for the most part, I still don't have much confidence in my voice as much as the other people my age do, so yeah, you may have to deal with me not sounding too sure of myself for a while. But if you like the video, like it, subscribe if you want to see the next parts when they come out, or comment with constructive criticism and I'll try to see if I can improve the video to the best of my ability. I don't have much tools to work with, but I decided to give it my all and celebrate the 10th anniversary of Pokemon Mystery Dungeon. See you next time. Bye!